to my cellar one more time. Never knew that mustard would be so much fun to talk about. In fact, the first comment tonight, if you ever get the chance, try fig mustard. Pretty sweet, pretty coarse, goes very well with cheese. Well, if I see some sometime in a small enough jar to invest in, I'll give that a shot. All right, here we go into game stuff. But we're going to be going back to mustard a couple of times, which is cool. I like it. One thing I thought about is the way melee combat is described as several exchanges of blows with one doing damage. However, missile weapons track individual shots and spells are tracked individually. That seems strange. No, well, maybe not so strange if I explain how that came to be. A melee combat is not strike, parry, strike, parry. It will take two swords wielded by people that know what they're doing. It's a swirling bang, bang, parry, bang, smack, If it bothers you that it's only one, then you could say that from that swirling exchange of blows, you got 6 points. Now, whether it was a one blow or a bunch of them, but it's an abstraction. Yeah, missiles can be counted. Spells can be counted. Swings can't. You can't count the swings and the parries and the clashes and the catching it on the shield. It has to be an abstraction. It's the only way it will work in anything that doesn't seem like a 4th edition pinball machine game on a tabletop. Boring enough to put you in tears, gnashing your teeth and pulling your hair, if you're fortunate enough to still have hair. And teeth, for that matter, I guess. Anyway, it had to be that. It's an abstraction. It's simply an abstraction. If you can accept it better by saying, okay, it's a swirling, blows, and from it you get, okay, whatever. It's basically getting through the other guy's armor or having him get through yours. You get whacked for some damage. It's an abstraction, but it's a necessary one. Thanks for continuing to humor my maimed character line of thinking. I definitely agree it comes down to how much it detracts from the group's or the DM's flow. If nothing else, it can be another demand for henchmen and hirelings. You mentioned the influence of alignment. My questions all originate from the section on changing alignment found on page 25 of the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Putting aside the obvious difficulties of a character who is in direct service to a deity, such as a cleric or paladin, or a character trying to switch into an alignment not allowed by class, such as non-good rangers or non-evil assassins, although AD&D did allow a chaotic neutral assassin, are the AD&D alignment change rules too extreme in terms of penalties? No, I do not believe so. Not at all. In AD&D and we had, or in OD&D, we had multi-classing a thief who became, who started out as something else, who became, started as a fighter and then went on and eventually became a thief and was proficient, or a bard. There's a good, better class to be a thief, be a fighter, be a thief. That'll be a bard. Okay, bards were excellent multi-class characters. Harder than heck, I agree, to build up to a decent level. But we considered a 6th or 7th level bard badass, because they had the thief skills, they had the fighting skills, and now they're a bard and they got those skills. It might have only been 6th level, but that was 6 badass levels. I don't think so. I think if you're going to declare an alignment at the beginning of the campaign, the beginning of the game, when you rule up your character, then part of the role playing is to adhere to that alignment. Adhere to that alignment. I very seldom ever started a character that wasn't neutral. Neutral good, perhaps. Neutral, if not. But aligning one side or the other is it enforces demands upon your player character. It enforces demands on you, the player. If you want to be, lawful good in a campaign that is, basically evil and therefore you have an edge, that's fine. But you have to stay lawful good. If you do things that aren't consistent with your alignment, then you should suffer penalties. Penalties. Now, yes, it's easier to show how a magic user or a cleric or a ranger or someone of that nature could be penalized, but I think anybody should be. If it's part of you as the DM, it's your job to enforce the role-playing aspect of the game. That's what we're here to do. We're here to play a role. If you don't want to be lawful good, don't start out lawful good. I can remember a couple of occasions over the years, back in the early days, where something would happen that would change your alignment for you. Not that you wanted it to be. And now all of a sudden, your name is anathema amongst your former friends. If you're going to play a role, play the role. It's not weaseling out to be neutral. Fine, start that way. If you start leaning toward tendencies one way or the other, it's the DM's, it's his obligation to let you know you're drifting. The new Age of Wonders 4 computer, it's a turn-based strategy game, I grant you. But your alignment is very important in that how other things will react to you. Well, D&D is not much different. And you can't just, change your outfit with the seasons. That's not role-playing. That's some sort of metagaming. You declare to be this character, this alignment, etc., then be it. The most obvious is the loss of XP to start the next level lower, along with the loss of hit die, point die. Yeah, well, sure. I think that's perfectly fair to whack you, or whack your player character. All those things in there. And yeah, it stops you from doing it at will. Oh, I'm going to be good now. Oh, man, if you're going to do something like that in my campaign, you would go on a trek halfway across the wilderness and fight horrible odds all the way there just to get back in good. That's the way it ought to work, I think. Play the role. Don't weasel around. I can actually definitely understand the transition period in an alignment language use, but is one level too much for what is described? No. There should be some consequences. Don't change alignments. You can't change what you are. You can't be a magic user who decides one day you're going to be a fighter. Well, you could if you wanted to start back over at first level. But you can't be a 5th level magic user who says one day I'm going to be a 5th level fighter. That's ridiculous. Clerics can't be... I would think that any cleric that had formerly served a neutral good, a lawful good, a lawful neutral deity would look very, very warily at a cleric that wanted to change and do something against that. I've told the story before about a game I was DMing at a friend's house, and I had brought pre-gens because I wasn't argue about who had what and all that crap. Hi, let's play. And the person that had been assigned to be the cleric, or the paladin, the paladin, we didn't have a cleric, we had a paladin to be the moral police. He and I literally stood up on either side of the table, went eye to eye about 8 inches apart, about why he couldn't do some heinous thing he wanted to do, and I enforced it by alignment, by pointing at the device that he wore, that his character wore around his neck, proclaiming his alignment and his deity and whatever. Alignment's there for a reason. Violate alignment, suffer the consequences. I truly believe that you should. Okay. Anyway, I am a fellow mustard lover and always have a selection of different kinds in the fridge. Last night's dinner included sautéed cabbage and carrots in a sauce of sour cream and mustard. Were you being punished? I'm not a big fan of cabbage in any form except good coleslaw. But that's just me. Probably the oddest thing I top with mustard is ice cream. Yeah, I won't argue that that's pretty damn odd. I get mustard on my ice cream at a specialty shop once, and now I have to splash a dash on top of my vanilla. On a historical note, tomato ketchup is a newcomer, but as a condiment for fish, made out of nok mom, soy sauce, and pureed berries, it has been around for a long time. Yeah, I know. Ketchups used to be made out of some disgusting shit. And nuts in them, and that if it was all mixed up in a vat, they called it ketchup. And then along came tomato ketchup, and for things that goes on well, thank God. Keen's mustard on a medium rare roast beef sandwich. Not familiar with Keen's mustard. I'll have to look it up. I went and looked up something else on tonight's comments, and I should have looked up that one. I'm making a tabletop RPG that is supposed to be quite metal and about being being a musician in a darkish fantasy setting. I've imagined the world and the roles to be badass and somewhat brutal. So as a guide for what not to do for my game, my question is that during your time working for TSR or even after that, what kind of boundaries you guys had to oblige when it came to what kind of content you could include in your books? Good topic to talk on. In today's society, being very socially conscious, some would call it woke, you don't want to hit any stereotypes in your game at all. None. Unless you can make some historically sound argument for it, and even then you ought to be ready to give in if a female wants to play a male character or vice versa, or whatever. Don't go there. Don't go there. Now, some of this woke stuff has gone a little far, in my opinion. We never thought that orcs were African Americans or any of that kind of shit. But you've got to watch what you're putting in there. Fact of life, you have to look at not offending today's media, social media. If you do something stupid or say something stupid or put something stupid in there, you will be vilified, crucified, and hung from a square before the day is out. What didn't we put in our books? No sex. The sexiest thing in first edition was a succubus. And we caught shit about that when it first came out, and I think it was in one of the supplements. We caught crap about that. Oh, seducing. Got to remember, this is a mid and late 70s, or mid into the late 70s. And we had to worry about that. Lots of mores, social mores were breaking down, and we had to be very careful to tread a fine line down the middle while all the crap was going on from both sides. All right? The Eldritch Wizardry supplement nearly killed the brand because I used a picture on the cover, a suggestive picture, in that it was of a female form lying on a platform or an altar or a stone, you choose, draped with a cloth over her mommy parts, and no nipples, no areola, nothing. It was just a female form. And we had little mom and pop shops send them back unopened. I can't sell this in my store. It was erotic. Now I've also heard from players who saw that and went, woo-hoo-hoo, and decided the game was worth playing. That's not why I selected that cover. You have to be oh so careful in that regard nowadays. Don't offend. You shouldn't offend. And if you do, you'll pay the price of no sales. No sexual stereotypes, no racial stereotypes, no allusions to races or stereotypes that could be offensive. And I know that means today you're walking a fine line tiptoeing through the tulips. But that's what it is today. And if you don't follow those, if you violate one of those, you'll be up to your butt in alligators. All right. Of course, we couldn't put anything that was demonic or satanic or anything like that, even not having any. We never published a temple or the details of a evil spell or anything like that could be mildly considered satanic or devil crap, devil worship. And yet we had the satanic panic. Otherwise it would have been some other panic. But we survived. Saw the other videos. Glad you're enjoying Age of Wonders. I've won a couple of times as a brainless barbarian champion spamming armies of minions. But I can't figure out how to win as a Wizard King. I can't either. I also finished Baldur's Gate 3, and the legendary Boule was there. Okay. And He tried to send me a screenshot, but couldn't. Okay. The belay has become iconic. I won't say that the belay will sell a game, but some people seem to think it's in the public domain, and it isn't. I don't know. It'd be fun to pull a few chains and tell them they can't use it without my permission, because I did create it. TSR never owned it. I never signed anything that said that anything I came up with became their property, ever. I always wondered why I hadn't, but I never asked. I was not a fool, entirely. Glad to hear your reunion trip was a success. Yep. We're happy to report to you that the school club here is back in action. We have doubled the new members this year. We've started 3 campaigns after school and a couple of campaigns that are meeting sparsely during the school day. Great. I'm delighted to hear it, and you must be loving life. My question: what are the best ways to support and encourage young DMs in your opinion? I have 2 that are brand new and 2 that have done a little, and they're all doing great. But I wondered what advice you have besides the typical platitudes. Well, yeah, platitude diminishes the effect of what you said. Coming from you, the teacher, and coming from you, the head person, that's great. Now, what could you do to bolster them? Tell you what, why don't you poll their players, and without them knowing, and just ask them, is she doing a good job? And apparently they are. So you can go home with legitimate, wow, man, your people are loving it. You're doing a great job. I've got the information here to prove it. Listen in. Make a point of stopping by whatever that group's table is and listening in for a little while. And maybe make a couple of positive comments based on what you heard, and maybe a couple of suggestions that might make it easier or more fun. I'm not sure exactly the age limits here. I do remember, though, that young teens can be very fragile, and so I understand you're wanting to keep them pumped up and keep them positive about themselves and what they're doing. And I think that's great on your part. Second bonus question. I asked a couple of weeks ago your opinion on Baldur's Gate 3 in the video game. I probably zoned out because I don't recall your answer. Well, that's because I said none. I've never played it. It was a very short answer. But this week, WotC released maps on D&D Beyond. It's a 2D virtual tabletop similar to products out there already today. The catch here is you need to own the manual to use certain monsters, whereas the other virtual tabletops like Foundry, all you need to do is drop the image in there and you play. What do you think of the virtual tabletop future? I, and many I suppose, still prefer being in person, but the utility of playing with anyone, anywhere is obviously the biggest draw. Do you think we'll all get to a place where a tabletop session is just folks with computers in front of them? Sounds depressing to me. Not if you play on Zoom. You're seeing all the faces. You're getting facial feedback. You're able to read the cues. Granted, it's not the same as being able to reach over and say, oh, sorry, you lost your arm. I don't care for the tabletop map thingy, mainly because I don't play with maps. I don't provide maps to my players. They create maps by exploring. I might give them a map to show them how to get somewhere to start exploring. But it's not going to be a Rand McNally with a little legend on the box on how many mileposts to go or anything like that. Virtual tabletops is a different kettle of fish. Or, as I like to say, it's a barrel of different fish. There's a lot of things that I can see the appeal to. It's kind of like watching a cartoon, very crudely animated. And there's things I don't care for. Now, if I was playing a board game with one of these VTTs, I got no problem with that whatsoever. None whatsoever. It's not any different than playing on some of the sites now, like the Ticket to Ride with 4 of your friends. You're all interacting, through a side chat channel. I have no problem with that. For RPGs, I find it problematic. Doesn't mean it is. Just as old goat finds it problematic. I'm perfectly fine doing Zoom. During the pandemic, I did face-to-face games on Discord, I believe. And I've got a Zoom channel, and so when I've said before, there's a group in Okinawa that I've played 6 times with using Zoom, and I think we've all gotten to know each other a little. Maybe not to the nth degree that we would all sitting at the same table, but from the shoulders up, we all know each other really well, and what else matters? Okay? What you saw with the WotC is how the beginning steps of how they're going to monetize every single aspect of D&D that can be monetized. You can't play on our spiffy new channel unless you own the books. They'll be charging you'll have to own the books. There'll be membership fees or performance usage fees or something of that. WotC is going to monetize every single aspect of D&D that they possibly can. That's what businesses do. They're going to milk it and squeeze it until it's like a cleaned intestine. Nothing left in there at all. And that's what's going on. So, if you want to play on their spiffy pay-as-you-go platform, go right ahead if you're having fun. I'm not going to tell you don't. I'm not going to spend the money to do it. But I'm not going to tell you not to. If you have fun, do it. If you go and find that you play it one time and don't have fun, don't do it again. That's like I said, trying a new food dish. Didn't like it, don't eat it anymore. That's easy enough. They will monetize every single thing they can. And it'll go down to micro purchases. And you know what I mean by micro purchases. The little $3 here, $5 there, that if you're playing an online game, they try to get you for. I play 2 online games, Seaport and Train Station. There we go. I've played both of those since I was in chemotherapy several years ago is when I started. And they have micro purchases. I spend $10 a month on each of them. I don't have to. I choose to. I don't have to spend anything and I can play there. If you don't want to pay, don't play. Oh, okay. I had a special request. Okay, there it is. And there it is. A Viking on acid. They change colors. You can't see it because it's... Alright, the Disco Vikings. Gone back to slumber and hibernation for several more months. Alright. One of the adventures we are running is Tomb of Annihilation, which is one of the 5e reimaginings of classic module. This one was being Tomb of Horrors. Yeah, that's pretty easy. Wonder if you had any particular thoughts on this adventure or the classic module worth mentioning. This particular module they have absolutely perverted. To play this in 5e with 5e rules is a gross perversion of the spirit in which it was written. It was supposed to be lethal as hell. It was meant to be. You had to think. You had to be smart. You had to be clever, because you damn sure weren't going to fight your way through. Now, how do we possibly convert that to a game where it's nearly impossible to be killed? I started with the Blue Book, Holmes, I think, which was basically OD&D. It was still 1d6 damage for all weapons, and most of the text was cut and paste OD&D little round books. I know, I cut and pasted those. Only levels 1 to 3, if I recall correctly. Right. It was just to be an intro. And it didn't have nasty demons and horrible devils. It was very, very, very toned down. Because we wanted moms or dads or grandmas to buy these for the kids because they don't have the stuff other people were finding objectionable. Kids want to play? Fine. We'll just take away all the lurid, lusty parts or the dark, satanic parts. Some of us had AD&D books, so we had AD&D rules kind of at will. Say, like, if we wanted to play a druid or a ranger, good, because the front of the book said they weren't written in stone, and change them and bring them in and fool with them any way you wanted. We also used the AD&D equipment list. We kind of stuck with basic, though, and then expert in the later edition. We also stuck to low levels, usually re-rolling characters to start a new module. I was never interested in fighting Zeus or running a kingdom. Dangerous woods or dungeons filled with orcs, goblins, trolls, etc., and real risk of death was always great fun. I agree. Good on you. Did you play, design, or edit basic, expert, or backme companion at all? What are your thoughts on the various basic editions, basic versus the AD&D? I've told the story before. I'll tell it again briefly. There was a period of several days where Gary and I were locked in his office, literally closed the door and turned the key, in his office with the instructions downstairs that no one but our wives was to put through on a phone call. And during those several days, we cut up several versions of the Little Brown Books, and okay, we brainstormed through it and how we do. And okay, that became basic over on that wall, and everything else on the other walls was advanced. And we'd marked them, okay, this bit of whatever needs to be expanded, whatever. And then Gary Coley took it, got with Dr. Holmes, and they went from there. And I had no more to do with it. Gary went home and wrote the first book, brought it in. Mike Carr was the editor. I looked it over afterwards, after Mike was done, and that was the last time I had any real input on what was going on with AD&D. I was busier than hell with my side of the business. We were doing games and magazines and calendars, and everything we were doing, we touched, would turn to money. Basic was intended as a boiled down, simplified version of D&D, what became AD&D. It was meant for younger players, new players. It was meant to skirt around some of the problems we were having with Satan and devils, and this was coming. This was starting now, and that's what it was for. It didn't have a lot of course, it couldn't throw a fireball or anything kind of like that because it was only first through third levels, and in our cynical, sinister marketing savvy, we knew that everybody that bought the blue book would eventually buy AD&D because they'll want more. So it was a primer. It was an intro. It was a free, well, it wasn't a free sample, but it was a sample to get you interested and to whet the appetite. What happened to the setting idea of undiscovered civilizations? One case for reference is the Mole People. I kind of wonder if this played a factor in crafting the Drow. Well, the Drow were crafted for several different reasons. Number one, they were evil elves and made a counterpart to the elves that Gary loathed. And that, more than anything, I think, is why the Drow were created. Something underground with a very superior race behind it all, not dumb, stupid, semi-intelligent monsters, and not a death-defying, world-destroying dragon. It's really hard to posit finding a civilization that nobody's found before unless it's way removed geographically in the wilderness, in uncharted seas or whatever. When I wrote The Snake Riders of Arredondo, I created a race that had been forgotten, had become subverted and evil, kind of a philosophically and religiously incestuous. What they worshipped and what they did became weirder and weirder and weirder, and they were fallen. They were fallen, basically fallen fae. And then I created some otherworldly beasts that they controlled. And they got there in a gondola hanging underneath a sentient, gas-filled creature. Because they were hired by the Council of Wizards to go check out what was going on and here to get you there and not have to brave the seas and pirates and storms. Here, we'll float you over. That was just, get them there in a hurry. I really enjoyed creating the race of fallen fae I really enjoyed creating the otherworldly beings. Nothing says you can't. The thing is, to be plausible, there has to be a radical environmental change, either far the hell away, or they got to be underground or something. And then you have to have a somewhat plausible story of the whatever they're going to go find. You have to have a backstory ready. It can be done, but there's a whole lot easier way to set up adventures. Woo. I love condiments. A long time. I told you we'd be talking about mustard. A long time ago in junior high school, I once did a science project that put various condiment samples under a microscope to determine the various ingredients. When it comes to mustard, I like a good horseradish or wasabi. Well, yes. Well, I have chronic sinusitis, so I take it very lightly on the horseradish and stay away from wasabi already because a good snort, a good dollop of wasabi just will drain my head out. We won't even talk about it. But I do like mustards that have horseradish in them. I don't eat plain ground horseradish. I have it, but I use it in things. I always love mustard with bologna, a special pickled bologna. But I'm too far south to find it regularly. Oh, well, yeah. Bologna now, or bologna. I know bologna. I love a bologna and cheese sandwich with some yellow mustard or some spicy brown like what I showed you last week. Oh yeah. Now I had to look up what the hell pickled bologna is. Okay. In my advanced age, I'm really not that interested in trying any new foods. I can't look at a jar of pickled bologna without reverting back to my PTSD from Vietnam is scum weenies. I ate more Vienna sausages on board ship. Ritz crackers, Vienna sausages, and canned spray cheese. Aerosol cheese. Because the food was so awful 3 days out of 5. I just can't look at anything like that now. It comes out dripping wet. No, that's too much like a scum weenie. But I'll take your word for it. What do you think the difference is between writing fiction for adventures and writing fiction for its own sake? Besides the obvious unpredictability of the main characters, do you think questions of pacing and climatic scenes are fundamentally different? What about villains and setting? That's a really interesting question. And since I downloaded this a couple hours ago, in the back of my mind, I've been coming back to it. I find it much harder to write fiction, plain fiction. Than I do writing adventures. Now, I don't have a problem writing many backstories, character explanations, monster descriptions, things like that. Writing fiction, and the only piece I ever did that got published was something I did for Eldritch in Heroes and Magic, is much more difficult because in the setting up of writing of an adventure, you can gloss over a lot of stuff you need in fiction, like motivation. Okay? Can't just have something be evil. There's got to be a reason they're evil or a direction that they're coming from to be evil or something. Writing for fiction takes a ton of detail. You gotta talk about the sky what color is the sky that day, how's the weather doing, the smells in the air, the people around you. You have to, because that's what's in the story. There's a lot more detail. in a game, you don't have to write an adventure. You don't have to write that the party gets hungry. At the same time, if you're doing this as fiction, you have to write about hunger pangs, growling stomachs, what they ate last, what they like, what their diet is, what's available to eat, what it smells like. See where I'm going with this? It's just a depth, a whole factor of different level when you do one or the other. You can write an adventure with spare, tight prose, explaining a backstory. These guys are evil. The mole people are evil. You don't have to go into, as you would in a story, why the mole people are evil, how the mole people were persecuted, or were the persecutors. Or you have to do that in fiction. In adventure, they're evil. Okay, that's the way the adventure's set up. That's the whole premise. The mole people are doing terrible things. Go take care of the problem. There you go. There's a premise. Villains don't have to be nuanced or subtle in an adventure. He's the big bad evil guy. You don't have to have tortured thought conversations in his head about why he's evil or what he's evil. Don't have to have any motivations. Don't have to have any goals. World domination. Kill everything he sees. Simple stuff. On Wandering Monsters reminds me of why intelligence and charisma can be valuable to anyone when the DM uses reaction rolls and doesn't just assume the PCs are going to try and slaughter every goblin or orc that crosses their path. Do people even use charisma anymore? I mean, I always thought if you had a really high charisma, that obviously if you're going to be a fighter you want strength, and if you're going to be a wizard you want but having a big charisma, a good charisma, 16, 17 charisma, it enabled you to wiggle your way out of a whole lot of possibly tight, or wiggle information out of people that wouldn't be normally willing to give it to you, because they're just so charmed by your demeanor. Oh, yeah, you're your best friend. Okay? All right, we'll go on. A little charisma to up the chances on the reaction roll, and a little intelligence for bonus languages so you can really talk to the humanoids you find can go a long way to keeping both the PCs and bury the goblin alive. Bury, B-A-R-R-Y. And the emergent depth to an otherwise procedurally generated play session can be appreciated on both sides. Yes, they could. And I would like to see, if it were my campaign, they would be working against every one of their stats at one time or another. Something would come up and they'd have to roll against one of their stats, one of their 6 numbers. And so having a bummer one was a bummer, and when you got a chance to up a stat, you didn't go from 16 strength to 17 strength, but you might go from 10 wisdom to 11 wisdom, or even 12 to 13. Okay, you see where I'm going with that. You buffed up your weakest stats because there was always something that was going to rely on you and your weakest stat, and you were going to be vulnerable to. So you buffed them whenever you got the chance. Pardon me again. All right. This person is asking, and I guess he's asking the other commenters, have I ever talked about player character elves in his games? Don't have any. Don't. I have two sets of pre-generated characters that I use when I go to cons or run games online. I have the lower levels. They're all 4, 5, 6 level AD&D. So and I don't pose them any challenges that would be grossly unfair. I don't play that way. I have a second set that are higher levels, 7, 8, 9, and much more potent. The higher group all have accumulated items, and so their items, their possessions are all listed on their character sheets. And they're very formidable, as you might imagine. I don't have. There might be a half elf in the upper set, and that's only because when I make up pre-gens, if there's 7 spots at the table, I probably got 10 pre-gens, and I let them pick what they want. That way, more people are happy. But no, I'm not a big fan of the pointy ears. If I lean toward something other than human, it'd be dwarves. Probably because I'm short and I used to be much bigger around, and I could identify with them more. Have I given my thoughts on dual or multi-class fighter mages? Absolutely not. I don't care what you read in a book somewhere, how great the story was. I do not see ever allowing mages that can do fighting stuff or fighters that can do magic stuff. Ever. No. That, if you allowed that as a repeatable class or subclass, they would dominate the game. If magic users didn't start out with fewer points and level up so slowly, they'd dominate the game. That was all thought out. We studied that aspect of it when we prepared for AD&D and decided we liked it. Don't like multiclass. Now, having said that, all right, we did have the Bard. I have a couple of pre-gens that are multi-classed. They're all very low level. If I were to allow multi-classing in my home campaign or a campaign I was running, I would, at probably 5th level, make them choose another one, if that's what they're, or commit to that one and that's it. Okay, all right, you are now something forever and forever. And then I would start dividing the points between the two classes. Multi-classing should have penalties, because as far as I'm concerned, multi-classing is another way to try and min-max the game, trying to game the system. I don't care for it. I don't care what somebody in some story wrote about this guy that could shoot the eyes out of squirrels with a crossbow, duel with Inigo Montoya, and shoot fireballs out his ass. Good story. Not a good player character. I don't care that he shoots fireballs out his ass. You can't. Alright. Or how in later editions there are ways for mages to cast spells in heavy armor. Not aware of that. Not aware of that at all. So that must be something I missed somewhere. Or is that some later edition? But magic users in AD&D did not cast They did not wear armor and cast spells. No. Why? Well, one day somebody asked us, and I believe we told them that ferrous materials and magic are mutually exclusive and interfere with each other, so therefore you can't be wearing armor. Now, what I have allowed magic users to wear crafted leather that doesn't make them invulnerable, but it certainly makes them better than running around in a bathrobe. I see no reason why they can't. And so, from, remember, ours went down. So from being a 9, yeah, I'd let them be a 6 if they had found that, it would be a very valuable item. And, however the parties divide stuff up, that'd be what, have to be part of his loot or something, I guess. I have mustard on roast potatoes. Maybe strong mustards can be used to bring on sneezing and stop magic users casting spells. Well, I guess they certainly could if they were powdered, couldn't they? If you had a way of blowing it over there. Certainly. That powdered mustard could easily be an easily obtainable thing that you could put into a flask and a little charm of bursting or whatever cast upon it. Make a great something to chuck in the room before you went in. I'd allow that. Not just willy-nilly. There'd be a procedure and a cost and all this kind of stuff. But certainly I'd allow that. I'm a big mustard fan, especially brown spicy. Yeah, I like Boji's. But my favorite is black pepper. It's the king of spices. I put it on basically everything. Well, I gotta admit, I eat a lot more pepper than my wife does. I wouldn't consider eating a baked potato and sour cream without a lot of freshly ground pepper on top. I eat cottage cheese with salt and pepper. I pepper a lot of things. Pepper's a good spice, no doubt. Here in the UK, we have Coleman mustard, also available as a powder. I can remember several years ago having some Coleman mustard from a jar. I'm sorry, as many mustards as I like, I just don't have. Coleman mustard just seems to be heat you smear on your tongue. Bite without real flavor. Overpower anything that you put on it that wasn't a sturdy meat. Lots of cheeses, it would just be, that's all you'd taste. Now, Coleman mustard powder in those little vials that blow. Now, that would be an effective weapon. I always figured the reason why the economy isn't flooded with gold is the king had his tax collectors penny pinching the hell out of everyone. Well, that's an interesting proposition. However, if that were the case, I don't believe he'd be the king very long, would he? Just a thought. Your world, your campaign can have any rationale that you want. There's no right one or wrong one unless it has an obvious contradiction. And then you can just say, it's fantasy. It's fantasy. Okay, let's see. That's all the questions and the comments. Got a project coming out with Wizard Tower Games, The Lost Adventures. Got something coming out with old school gamers, Curse of the Weaver Queen. Got 2 more in work. And one of these days, we're going to get everything we need from China for the D20 delving. I'm telling you, it is just impossible since the pandemic to get any kind of delivery in any kind of timely fashion as we used to. Unbelievable. Yep, there's going to be a convention in the middle of July in Battle Creek next year. And what else? Can't think of much. I'm not going anywhere until Game Hole. So I got a few weeks at home yet. And if you got a chance to go to Game Hole, come to Game Hole. If Don's there with Wizard Tower Games, you'll find me there. I'll put up a sign of when I'll be there to talk to people and sign crap or whatever. If my Weaver Queen is all assembled and put together, I'll spend some time at that booth also. The Weaver Queen had too many stretch goals, and they're still collecting the bits and pieces to fill them all. It's a damn good adventure. And like anything I write, it's not your standard hack and slash. The curse of the Weaver Queen does not have the connotation that just simply reading those words would trigger in most D&D players. And on that little bit of intrigue, I will bid you a Dodatagovi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.